What's up, everyone? I found some Reddit threads this week that honestly messed with my head a little. If you're into that kind of thing, subscribe and hit the bell, and let's go. I hired a cleaner through an app, and now I'm too afraid to sleep in my own bedroom. What starts as a simple solution to a household problem becomes a slow burn invasion of the most private space you have. This is a story about boundaries, violation, and the particular terror of someone proving they can access your home whenever they want. Here, I've always been picky about my bedroom. It's my private space, my sanctuary. 3 months ago, I hired Sarah through a cleaning app for weekly Thursday sessions. She had great reviews and seemed professional. The first couple visits were fine. She'd come, clean, leave. Then I started noticing my stuff was moved. Not stolen, just rearranged. My books went from author organized to color organized. My pillows in different positions, my closet sorted by color instead of outfit type. It bothered me that she was touching personal items when I never asked her to, so I left a detailed note on my bed with pictures showing exactly how everything should stay. I wrote clearly, "Do not touch personal items, under any circumstances." I even included photos of my bookshelf, bed, and closet positioned correctly, thinking the visual evidence would be impossible to misunderstand. The next Thursday, I came home early from work. Everything was moved again. Books rearranged by color, pillows repositioned, closet sorted Sarah's way. There was no accident, no misunderstanding. She had deliberately ignored my instructions. That's when it hit me. This was intentional. At that point, OP faced a sickening realization. Someone she had invited into her home, someone she had trusted with a key to her private space, had repeatedly violated her explicit boundaries even after being told not to. But that was just the surface of what was really happening. There was something much worse coming. OP was about to discover that repeated trespassing was only the beginning. When OP got home Thursday, she found her bedroom completely rearranged yet again. That's the moment things shifted from just weird to genuinely frightening. Sarah couldn't have made her intentions any clearer if she tried, because now I knew. This wasn't a misunderstanding. Sarah was looking at my explicit note, the laminated one with all the photographs, and choosing to ignore it deliberately. Either she didn't care about my boundaries at all, or she was actively doing this on purpose, and I couldn't figure out which option was worse. I started checking my room obsessively, every morning before work, every evening when I got home, photographing everything, timestamps, detailed notes, what had moved, and where. I'd photograph my nightstand, go to work, come home, and photograph it again. Sometimes nothing had changed. Sometimes small things had shifted, a book spine facing a different direction, a pillow slightly askew. But every Thursday I'd come home to find the entire bedroom completely rearranged. I couldn't sleep in there anymore. I'd lie in bed thinking about her in my space when I wasn't home, touching my things, moving them around, deciding what should go where in my bedroom. The thought made my skin crawl. I moved to the couch. Every night I'd spiral. Is this crazy? Am I losing my mind? Am I overreacting? Then I'd check my photographs, and there it was. Undeniable. Proof. My bedroom was being violated by someone I'd hired to clean. The worst part was not knowing. Not knowing if this was deliberate torture or just a deeply disturbing compulsion. Not knowing when it would stop. And most importantly, not knowing how many other times Sarah had let herself in. By this point, OP wasn't just afraid of Sarah anymore. She was afraid of her own bedroom. Her most private sanctuary had become something contaminated and unsafe. But here's where it clicked for OP. The changing wasn't random. It wasn't absent-mindedness. It was deliberate. And once that realization hit, so did something worse. The fear. I realized what she was doing. Testing me. Every time I left that note, every warning, she'd come back and move something else. Not forgetfulness, defiance. She wanted me to know she could do it regardless. My bedroom stopped feeling safe. I started photographing everything before Thursday. Timestamps, photos, a timeline of invasion. It's my bedroom. The one room that should be entirely mine. The one place I lock the door to escape. and she decided she had the right to rearrange it, to study it, to prove she could touch anything she wanted and I couldn't stop her. I moved to my couch, couldn't sleep in that room anymore. Every time I closed my eyes, I thought about her hands moving through my space in the dark, her eyes studying how I live. The horror is this. I'm compiling evidence in my own home, documenting the violation, and I still don't know how many times she's been in there. The app only shows 3 months. What was she doing before I noticed? The Reddit thread erupted. People got it immediately. They understood the specific horror of what was happening. The fact that she kept rearranging things after you explicitly told her not to means she was testing you. She was proving she could do it regardless of what you asked. That's not absent-mindedness, that's deliberate boundary violation. Honestly, get a lawyer involved. This is a civil case waiting to happen. The app company failed to disclose a massive privacy vulnerability and allowed an unauthorized person into your home multiple times. Document everything and report this. You need to check if anything is actually missing. Not obvious stuff like medications, documents, personal records. People who do this kind of psychological game sometimes scout for something specific before escalating. And that's the thing that takes your breath away when you read it. She doesn't know. The violation could go deeper than she even realizes. Then came the discovery that made everything worse. I sat down that night and did something I should have done weeks earlier. I pulled up the app's service history tab. I needed to know exactly when Sarah had been in my apartment. The app logs everything: dates, times, marked as completed. The first few visits were all Thursdays like we agreed, but then I started seeing entries that made my stomach drop. There were visits logged on days I hadn't even scheduled her. Tuesday afternoons, Wednesday mornings, a Saturday I'd been out of town. 4 unscheduled visits total that the app recorded, all from Sarah's account, all marked as completed. She'd let herself in on random days when I wasn't there. Just walked into my apartment whenever she wanted. I did the math. If the app only shows the last 3 months of history, those were 4 separate occasions she came back specifically to rearrange my bedroom. 4 times I didn't know she was there. 4 times she proved she could access my space without permission. But what terrified me more was the gap in my memory. How long had she actually been doing this? The app history only goes back 3 months. Had she been coming back before that? How many times had she been in my apartment when I wasn't home? I had no way of knowing. The comment section lit up with dread. The rearranging is psychological warfare. She wanted you to doubt yourself, feel unsafe in your own bedroom. Those unauthorized visits were her proving she could enter your apartment in the middle of the night if she wanted to. Genuinely horrifying. Exactly this. And the escalation pattern is what kills me. She kept doing it even after OP said stop. Most people would just stop. But she came back to prove she could do whatever she wanted. That's someone who gets off on the violation itself. OP should absolutely check Sarah's other app reviews. I bet someone else reported weird behavior. The moment she came back without authorization after you told her to stop is proof of intent. Most people would listen, but she came back anyway. That's someone who wanted you to know she could access your space whenever she wanted. And that realization hit different. Sarah could come back anytime.
The moment felt different when OP took action. Panic transformed into something colder. I changed my locks that evening. Didn't wait. Called the lock company and had them come same day. I ordered cameras, the kind with cloud backup and motion alerts. Installed them myself in the bedroom, living room, and entry. Then I filed a formal complaint with the app, attached all my documentation and the service history logs showing the unauthorized visits. They reviewed the case and suspended Sarah's account indefinitely. I never got an explanation from them about how this happened, just a generic response about taking user safety seriously. I called the police non-emergency line. The officer said there was nothing criminal since nothing was stolen, and technically Sarah had been given access as part of a service agreement. They couldn't help. I was told to change my locks and move on. I never found out why Sarah did this. I never learned how many times she actually came back. The 3 unscheduled visits in the logs could have been all of them, or just the ones the system caught? I'll never know. The comment section lit up. What scares me is wondering what else she was doing during those unsupervised visits. Was she taking photos? Looking for something specific? The app company knew about this loophole and didn't tell users. That's criminal negligence. Here's what stays with you about a story like this. It's not violation, it's intimate violation. Sarah didn't steal or destroy. She rearranged, reorganized, proved she could access the most private space and move things around to assert control. The law doesn't have words for that specific horror. Someone in your bedroom making small changes to prove they can. OP did everything right. Changed locks, got cameras, filed the complaint. By all external measures, she won. But the unknowing doesn't go away. She'll never know why Sarah did this, how many times she really came back, what she was looking for. That space stopped being hers when OP realized someone else could enter it at will. The permanence of that's the trap of trusted access weaponized, and why stories like this stay with you. On to the next one.
My childhood neighbor used to hand feed me from over a 10-foot fence. I just realized I was being groomed, and my parents knew. This story starts in a childhood most of us would find utterly normal. A backyard, a fence, a neighbor 2 houses down. But it's a memory that was buried for years until it came flooding back. Now, looking back, what happened at that fence reveals itself as something far more sinister than it seemed. I was 6 years old the first time this started, maybe 7. There was a neighbor down from us who had this impossibly tall fence, 10 feet, maybe more. The wood was weathered gray, and there were natural gaps between the boards where the wood had warped and separated. I don't know why I was so fascinated by that fence. I think mostly because you could see through the gaps if you pressed your eye close, and sometimes, if you were very still and very quiet, you'd see movement on the other side. One afternoon, I remember a pale hand appearing through one of those gaps. Long fingers, weathered skin. It was holding something, a slice of apple, I think, or maybe a strawberry. Just the fruit, nothing else, just held there in the space between the boards. I took it. I don't remember if I said thank you. I don't remember being scared. I just remember how natural it felt, how she'd appear at that fence at the same time most days, usually when I was alone. A grape, a piece of melon, a cookie broken into small pieces. Always one piece at a time. Always through that gap. Always when my parents were inside. But here's the thing, they weren't always inside. Sometimes I could see them through our kitchen window, watching. My mother would be standing there with a cup of coffee, just watching me at the fence. Not stopping me, not calling me inside, just watching while a woman on the other side fed me fruit like I was something in a cage. It felt special. It felt secret. That's what I realize now, looking back. The secrecy was the point. The ritual. The pale hands. The way she'd whisper my name softly through the fence. How small everything became. Just me, her, one piece of fruit at a time. And my parents, watching from the window, letting it happen. That fence, those gaps, those moments, they were grooming, plain and simple. The controlled interaction, the secretive timing, the intimacy of being fed. And the worst part? The people who were supposed to protect that kid could see it happening. They watched and did nothing. But here's the insidious part that buries itself in memory, the part that doesn't surface until much later. That child didn't feel violated, she felt special. And that's exactly how predators work. What started as an anomaly quickly settled into ritual. The fence visits weren't random anymore. Hand feeding became a structured, anticipated pattern, a rhythm OP began to recognize and crave. It became part of the fabric of childhood, layered with its own gravity and secret weight. It happened almost every week. Wednesday afternoons were the standard. I started anticipating it, the way a kid learns to recognize a pattern. That pale hand through the gap, apple slices, rind still on, grapes threaded onto her finger like a present. Once, beef jerky, impossibly sophisticated to 6-year-old me. She always had something. The hand-feeding rule never changed, always hand to mouth. I'd stand in the same spot where I could see my parents through the kitchen window. Not hidden exactly, not fully supervised either. I knew without being told not to mention this. The whole thing had a hushed quality. Her voice was soft through the fence, almost a whisper, like the wood demanded quiet. Those whispered words made the interaction feel intimate, special. The waiting was the worst part, that electric anticipation before she appeared. Heart racing, stomach tight in a way I couldn't explain. But underneath the excitement was something else. A tightness I'd feel sometimes. Moments where the kindness felt off, wrong in ways I couldn't articulate. Not a word I'd use at 7 or 8, just this sense that the care was special in a way that also felt wrong. Like I was getting away with something dangerous. The groomer had engineered the perfect trap, a ritual that felt like special attention and kindness. But underneath, always underneath, there was something OP's body knew before her mind could catch up. That ancient awareness that care, in the wrong hands, could be a weapon. A gift could be a trap. And that's exactly how these patterns take hold. Years passed. The memory of the fence, the hand feeding, all of it sank deep. OP didn't think about it, didn't want to. Then, in therapy, as an adult, something shifted. A therapist asked the right question. And suddenly the whole thing was back, vivid and wrong. I was sitting in my therapist's office when she asked about my childhood boundaries. One word, boundaries. And suddenly I was 6 years old again, tasting fruit through a fence gap. The memory flooded back, but this time I wasn't marveling at treats. The way she timed it when my parents weren't looking, how she'd whisper, "This is our special thing, don't tell them." The intimacy of being hand-fed, which I thought was kindness, was actually control. She was teaching me that a stranger's touch was normal, that I should accept food from her hands, that secrecy was okay. Textbook grooming. My therapist said those exact words. That's grooming. And I broke. The post went live, and the Reddit thread filled with people who recognized exactly what OP was describing. Other survivors shared their own therapy moments, their own realizations. The hand-feeding detail is what's disturbing me most. That's deliberate, intimate control behavior. Grooming isn't always violent. It's about slowly erasing a child's sense of physical boundaries until they don't even know they're being violated. The fact that your family just moved on and never discussed it is its own trauma. You deserved answers and protection, not silence and complicity. Did your parents ever explain their reasoning at all? Or did they just pretend nothing was happening when you mentioned the neighbor? They didn't explain anything back then. I mentioned it casually a few times. The neighbor gave me candy. And my mom would just say, "That's nice," and move on. When I confronted her last month, she finally admitted she thought the woman was lonely and harmless. She told my dad not to make a fuss about it. She chose not to protect me because she didn't want an awkward conversation with someone on our street. A few weeks later, Dusty Revisit came back with an update post. My mother finally explained why she let it happen. I found out something I wasn't prepared for. I did some research after my therapy session and discovered my neighbor had been arrested about 6 months after we moved. The charge was listed as endangering minors. My hands shook when I saw it. Then I called my mother. I didn't accuse her of anything at first. I just asked her if she knew. There was a long silence. She said yes. She said she'd noticed how the neighbor acted around me, how she'd hand-feed me these treats, how it all felt off. My mom told me she brought it up to my father, and he got defensive about making accusations against the neighbor without proof. She said they didn't want to make a scene or cause drama in the neighborhood. They convinced themselves it was probably nothing. But they knew, they saw it, and they did nothing. The thread erupted. Your mom letting that happen is almost as disturbing as what the neighbor did. That's a fundamental breach of your safety. You have every right to process this with anger. Please look into accessing the original case files if you can. Even if she accepted a plea deal, there might be depositions or victim statements that help you understand what really happened. I'm genuinely horrified for you. A child cannot consent to that kind of physical attention from a stranger. Your parents should have been your shield, not her enablers. And that's the weight of it. 2 betrayals, not 1. Here's where things stand now. OP is in trauma therapy, working through the compounded betrayal of being groomed by a neighbor and then abandoned by the one person who was supposed to protect them. No contact with the mother. And still wrestling with a question: report it or let it lie? Then OP came back with an update post. My mother finally explained why she let it happen. I got her to sit down and actually talk about it. She admitted she saw things, the way our neighbor looked at me through that fence, the way she timed the feeding sessions for when we were alone in the yard. My mom said she mentioned it to my dad once, but he said I was fine and she didn't want to make a scene. She was ashamed. She chose her marriage over protecting me. She said she hoped I'd just forget about it like kids do. I'm 32 now, and I'm still in therapy because of her hope. The neighbor got arrested for endangering other minors less than a year after we moved. My mother knew. She absolutely knew, and she did nothing. When I asked her what she thought would happen if we went to the police, she just sat there. She couldn't answer. I needed her to understand the weight of what she'd done. I still don't think she does. Comments on this one hit different. People saw the architecture of what happened, and what didn't. The 10-foot fence itself is a massive red flag. That's not normal. Normal people don't build barriers like that unless they're hiding something or isolating victims from adult observation. You're right. I've been thinking about that fence a lot lately. In therapy, we talked about how the physical barrier was part of the grooming setup. Keep the victims separate, in a private space, unseen. My mom saw that design. She saw it working, and she told my dad not to make waves. And with that weighing still unresolved, we move on to the next one. My ex won't accept the breakup, and now nobody believes it's real. What starts as a relationship ending spirals into a nightmare of refusal, denial, and a support network that just won't believe it's over. I'm 30, and I need to get this out because I'm losing my mind. I was in a relationship with my boyfriend for 2 years. It was good at first, but it got controlling. Nothing physical, but emotionally draining. 6 weeks ago, I finally told him it was over. I remember the exact moment. I sat him down and said, "No, it's not working anymore. We're done." His response? He just looked at me and said, "No, we're not." Like it was that simple. Like he got to decide for both of us. I told him he had to move out. He said no. I asked him to leave. He refused. I told him to pack his things. He started acting like nothing happened. And here we are 6 weeks later, and he still lives in my apartment. He still sleeps in my bed. I've been sleeping on the couch for weeks now. He makes dinner like we're some happy couple. He talks about our future like I didn't end us. When I bring it up, he says I'm being dramatic or that I'll change my mind. It's like the breakup never happened at all. But the real nightmare part? I'm starting to think nobody in my life believes me either. My family keeps asking why he's still around so much. My friends are making jokes about us working things out. They keep asking when we're getting back together. When I tell them we broke up, they just laugh. It's like I'm the crazy one for saying we're done. I don't know what story he's told them, but something isn't adding up. 6 weeks of living in the same apartment as someone who refuses to acknowledge the word breakup. 6 weeks of her entire support system slowly, invisibly turning against her. What OP didn't know yet was the full scope of what he'd done. Each person in her life had been told something different. Each story had been tailored specifically for them, and none of them matched what was actually happening. 6 weeks passed, and he still hadn't left. 6 weeks of him acting like the breakup never happened, like that was something a person could simply choose to ignore, or argue their way out of, or just wait out until things went back to normal. But what she didn't realize was that he'd already started his campaign with everyone in her life, not just her. I'm 30, and I've never felt this trapped. I told him directly, "You need to leave." He'd stare at me or say, "We can work through this," like the breakup was negotiable. Every morning I woke in dread. He'd already be making breakfast for both of us. Pancakes, coffee, acting like it was just another day. I couldn't eat. I'd sit watching him move around our apartment like I'd never said this is over. I called friends asking what to do. Everyone said, "Just kick him out." But you can't just do that. There's a legal process and an eviction timeline. Meanwhile, I'm trapped in my own apartment with someone who refuses reality. The worst part wasn't physical. It was psychological. Every nice thing he did, making coffee, cooking dinner, felt like he was building evidence we were still together. Like these gestures proved I didn't mean the breakup. Then I started noticing something darker. He'd mentioned conversations I'd had that I'd never told him about. He'd bring up things my friends said, things they'd never mentioned to me. At first, I thought he was guessing, but the details were exact, too precise. He was tracking information deliberately. This was intentional. And that's when she understood. He wasn't just refusing to accept the breakup, he was rewriting it.
But isolation starts long before someone's physically trapped. And then OP found out exactly how far he'd already reached.
I didn't even know where to start. My sister pulled me aside at work and asked if I was okay, said he'd called her claiming I was going through something and seemed confused. He told her I'd been snapping at him, that I was emotional and unreasonable. That's when everything clicked into place. I started asking around. My best friend had gotten a call where he said we were going through a rough patch, but he was committed to working through it. My mom got a call about me not eating properly, about him being worried I might be depressed. Not that I kicked him out, not that I told him to leave. He was the concerned boyfriend managing a girlfriend in crisis. He'd called different people with different stories. For my sister, I was confused. For my friend, I was being unreasonable. For my mom, I was unstable. He was building a narrative where I was the problem and he was the patient one. When I tried to explain that we'd actually broken up, people looked at me like I was gaslighting them. My sister said, "He seems really worried about you." My mom asked if I wanted to talk to someone, like this was a mental health crisis instead of a breakup he wouldn't accept. My own family thought I was losing my mind because he'd convinced them I was the unreliable narrator of my own life. The comments understood immediately. This is textbook isolation and control. He's cut you off from your support system by controlling the narrative with them. This is a form of emotional abuse, and you need legal help immediately. The part about him calling your family individually is genuinely disturbing. He's systematically undermining your credibility so no one will believe or help you. That's predatory behavior. That's exactly what's happening. My sister pulled me aside last week and asked if I was okay, because apparently he called her crying about how I'm losing my mind over his friendship with an ex. He called my mom to check on me and told her I haven't been eating properly. I'm convinced he's strategically building a case that I'm mentally unstable, so when I try to remove him, no one will believe me. And that was when she realized she wasn't just trapped in her apartment, she was trapped in the narrative he'd built.
Then OP came back with an update. He's monitoring my accounts and I think he knows I posted. I got a hold of my sister today and asked her directly what he told her. She said he called saying we were taking space to work things out. My friend Sarah said he called her with a different story, that I had cold feet about the relationship and needed time to think. My mom, when I finally cornered her, said he told her I was being irrational and going through something. I started writing all of this down and it hit me. Each call was tailored. He wasn't just refusing to accept the breakup. He was systematically telling my support network different versions of the truth, each one designed to make me look unreliable or unstable. My sister thought we were still a couple working through something. My friend thought I was the one with doubts. My mom thought I was having some kind of breakdown. Nobody actually knew I had told him it was over. He made sure of that. I'm terrified now because I can see exactly how calculated this is, and I'm typing this knowing I don't know if he's seen it. The comments flooded in immediately. People weren't being subtle about what they were seeing. The fact that he won't leave your apartment is not normal. This isn't heartbreak. This is obsession and a refusal to respect your autonomy. You have every right to involve law enforcement. Change the locks. Call police for trespassing if necessary. Don't argue about the status of your relationship. You're not going to convince him or your family right now. Just legally remove him. This is solid advice, but check tenant laws first depending on your location. Even without being on the lease, he might have established residency just by living there. Some places require formal eviction notice. She might need to involve small claims court or actual eviction proceedings.
2 weeks later, she had the eviction papers in hand. Documentation began, screenshots, text histories, proof of his calls to everyone in her life. She posted a legal advice question about forced removal and tenant rights. He's monitoring my accounts and I think he knows I posted. I figured it out yesterday. My password hints changed on accounts he shouldn't know about. My banking email, cloud storage with all my docs. I didn't change them. The login history shows activity from an IP I don't recognize. Thursday afternoon when he said he was out. When I confronted him, he just shut down. I think he's been reading everything, emails, photos, messages. I'm terrified he knows about the Reddit post. Part of me wants to delete everything and start over, but my lawyer said to keep it as evidence. Now I'm acting normal around someone I'm convinced has been in my entire digital life, and I can't stop wondering what else he knows. The comment section wasn't kind to him on that one. He's created an alternate reality where the breakup doesn't exist. That's a level of delusion or manipulation that won't end without intervention. Document everything and get a lawyer. This one hits different because the isolation wasn't random. He systematized it. Every call was calculated, every lie tailored to make her look unreliable. That's not a heartbroken ex, that's control. And when she documented it, he escalated. Monitoring, access, presence. The legal system will force what she couldn't. The eviction will happen. But the psychology of being trapped with someone dismantling your credibility, that stays. And that is the last story for today.